Hey everyone! Tonight we start with champagne, silver ribbons, and betrayal dressed in a tuxedo. You might not survive this one, because tonight's story isn't about revenge that burns fast. It's about the kind that waits patiently, smiling through tears, and strikes when no one expects it. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And if you're listening right now, drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love seeing where these stories find you, from tiny apartments to quiet porches in the middle of the night. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe let a fan run for some gentle white noise. And let's begin tonight's journey together. 25 years of marriage. 25 years of building a life, sharing laughter, surviving fights, and pretending things were fine when they weren't. I thought our silver anniversary would be a celebration of endurance, a kind of victory lap for two people who had made it through everything. But Darren had other plans. He was a man of precision, the kind who ironed his shirts twice and spoke to waiters like they were beneath him. I used to mistake that for confidence. Now I know it was arrogance dressed up as order. The morning it all began. I woke to the smell of his cologne, something expensive and new. I watched him knot his tie in the mirror, humming under his breath. That alone was strange. Darren never hummed. "Big day?" I asked softly. He smiled, but it wasn't his real smile. "Just another meeting, Naomi." I noticed then that his wedding ring, the one with our initials etched inside, was missing. He'd replaced it with a thinner gold band, the kind that didn't leave much of a mark. "You forgot your ring," I said, trying to sound casual. "Oh," he muttered, glancing at his hand. "I'll switch back later. This one's more comfortable." Comfortable. That word lingered. When he left for work, I stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the quiet Georgetown street. The sky was gray, and a single crow perched on the neighbor's fence. I've always believed birds know things before people do. An hour later, the phone rang. I thought it was him calling to say he'd forgotten his briefcase again, but instead, it was his mother, Celeste Price. If coldness were a perfume, Celeste wore it daily. Her voice was smooth and careful, the kind that always sounded one step ahead. "Naomi, dear," she said, "are you preparing for the party?" "Yes," I said. "Darren wants to celebrate at a restaurant." "Good," she replied sharply. "A respectable venue shows people how important you both are. A home party looks provincial." That was Celeste, every word dipped in sugar, every tone a reminder that I had never been quite good enough for her son. She paused. "You've done well to hold on this long, Naomi, but have you thought about the future?" "The future," I repeated. "Darren's not so young anymore, 53. Can you imagine? And no grandchildren." Her favorite subject, the grandkids, I never gave her. "Celeste, we—" Yes, she interrupted. "Medical reasons? Still, it's wise to plan ahead. Perhaps you should put the condo in writing, just in case. I'm sure Darren would want it to stay in the family." "The condo is in both our names," I said, watching the rain start against the window. "Of course," she said sweetly, "but you must have the papers somewhere safe. You never know what could happen." Her tone lingered, the kind that left you chilled even after she hung up. When I put down the phone, I realized something simple but sharp. They were planning something. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. The kind of instinct that only comes from loving someone long enough to recognize when their voice has changed, when their hands linger too long on a lie. That night, I stayed awake long after Darren had fallen asleep beside me. His breathing was steady, peaceful. Too peaceful. At 3:07 a.m., his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He stirred, slipped quietly out of bed, and padded down the hallway. I followed in silence, my bare feet on the cold hardwood. Through the thin crack of the office door, I heard his voice. "We have to do this right," he whispered. A woman's voice, Celeste replied softly. "She won't suspect a thing." "Of course not," he said. "Naomi's too trusting. Always has been." I froze, then silence. The floor creaked under my weight, and I hurried back to bed, sliding under the blanket seconds before he returned. He slipped in beside me, body tense, heart beating fast. I pretended to sleep, but my eyes burned with unshed tears. By morning, he was different, almost tender. He kissed my cheek, called me my love, and asked what color tablecloths we should have for the anniversary dinner. Darren had never cared about tablecloths. That was when I knew for sure. Something wasn't just wrong, something was planned, and there's an old age saying that truth walks slower than lies, but never loses its way. I didn't know what the truth was yet, but I could feel it catching up. And somewhere deep down, I already understood when a man suddenly acts like a perfect husband. It's not love returning home. It's guilt trying to disguise itself. That morning, as he walked out the door, I whispered to myself, "You might think you're clever, Darren Price, but you just woke up the wrong woman." The next night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow and steady. Funny thing about marriage, you can share a bed with someone for decades and still feel like there's a wall between you thicker than concrete. Darren was sleeping beside me, or pretending to. I could tell by the way his breath hitched every so often, like he was thinking, not dreaming. I listened to the soft rhythm of rain outside, each drop tapping against the glass like a warning I hadn't yet deciphered it. When his phone buzzed again, he moved with practiced quiet, slipping out of bed like a man with a guilty conscience. I counted his steps, 1, 2, 3, then the faint click of the office door. I don't know what possessed me, but I followed, barefoot, heart pounding. I pressed my ear to the door. "Mom, she won't see it coming," he whispered. "It's perfect." Celeste's voice, crisp as winter air, drifted through the crack. "It needs to happen in public. Darren, that's the only way to make it stick." "Don't worry," he said. "After the toast, I'll say it. She won't argue in front of a crowd." There was a long pause. I could hear Celeste sipping something, maybe wine. Good. And once she signs, the condo is ours. Ours. Not his and mine. His and hers. I stumbled back from the door, pressing a hand over my mouth to stop from gasping. My stomach turned, not just from betrayal, but from recognition. I'd seen this pattern before, the way Darren sought approval from his mother, even as a grown man. She pulled his strings like a puppeteer. Every decision he made somehow traced back to her disapproving smile. He came back to bed an hour later. His skin was cool from the hallway air. "Can't sleep," he murmured when he noticed my eyes open. "Couldn't," I said softly. "Neither could you, it seems." He smiled faintly. "Just work. You know me." I nodded. Yes, I knew him. And I also knew that men who tell half-truths at 3 a.m. aren't thinking about spreadsheets. The next morning, he was chipper, too chipper. He brought me coffee in bed, something he hadn't done since our honeymoon. "You've been working so hard," he said, setting the cup down gently. "I want this anniversary to be perfect." I smiled through my confusion. "You're full of surprises lately." He leaned down, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Just wait until you hear my speech." Speech. That word settled like a stone in my chest. By mid-afternoon, I was pacing the living room, replaying his words in Celeste's voice. Public humiliation, a signing, the condo. It all pointed in one direction. They were going to strip me of everything and make it look like a choice. The doorbell rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. When I opened the door, Celeste was there, wrapped in her mink coat despite the mild weather. She looked like a woman arriving to inspect property, which, in her mind, she probably was. "Naomi, dear." She cooed, stepping inside without invitation. "I hope you're not too nervous about tomorrow. So many guests, and Darren's planning such touching words." I forced a polite smile. "Oh, I'm sure." She glanced around, her eyes landing on the framed wedding photo above the fireplace. "My, how young you both looked," she said. "Time really does fly, doesn't it?" Her tone was wistful, but her eyes were sharp. She wasn't reminiscing, she was assessing. "Tell me," she said after a pause, "do you still keep the condo deed in that little safe of yours? The one your father gave you?" The question hit me like cold water. Why do you ask? Oh, just curiosity, she said airily. You know me, always thinking ahead. Life is unpredictable. A fire, an accident, anything could happen. Best to keep such things accessible. She was fishing, plain and simple. I gave her a sweet smile. Oh, don't worry. Everything is quite safe. Her lips curled slightly. Good. I'm glad you're being practical for once. When she left, I sat in silence for a long time, the echo of her heels fading down the hall. That woman could slice flesh with her words and never raise her voice. I realized then that the game had already begun and I was the only one playing defense. That evening, I opened Darren's laptop. The password had changed. He never changed it, ever. I tried our anniversary date. No luck. His birthday. Nothing. Finally, out of habit, I typed the date we met backward. The screen unlocked. And what I found nearly stopped my heart. Search after search about property division, spousal rights, and how to keep the marital home in a divorce. The browser tabs were lined up like soldiers, methodical, precise, undeniable. He wasn't planning a celebration. He was preparing an execution. My execution. I stared at the glow of the screen for a long time before whispering, "Not today. Darren, not this time." When I shut the laptop, my reflection glared back at me in the darkened screen, tired. Yes, but alive. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew this: I was done being the woman who cried quietly in her kitchen while her husband planned her downfall. If he wanted a performance, he'd get one, but it wouldn't be the one he rehearsed. You know, people say money changes everything, but I've come to believe it's power that does. Not the kind you hold in your hands, but the kind you don't even realize you have until someone tries to take it from you. That night, I decided something simple: they could take my peace, my trust, even my marriage. But they would not take my name off that deed. And they would never, ever take my dignity. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window, like nothing had changed, like betrayal could hide behind cinnamon coffee and scrambled eggs. But once you've seen the mask slip, you can't unsee it. Darren hummed to himself as he made toast, a sound so foreign it felt staged. He poured me coffee with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Big day tomorrow," he said. "Yes," I murmured. "A day to remember." If he heard the edge in my tone, he ignored it. He sat across from me, phone face down beside his plate. His new cologne hung heavy in the air. "You'll love the restaurant," he said, buttering his toast with unnecessary care. "It's elegant, upscale, the kind of place that deserves us." Us? The word sounded hollow now. I nodded and stirred my coffee, my mind replaying Celeste's voice. "Make it public. Darren, that's the only way to make it stick." He was staging my humiliation as a toast. When he left for work, I picked up his phone, locked, 6 digits. I tried our anniversary, his birthday, his mother's birthday. Then, on impulse, March 8th, International Women's Day, it unlocked. That was Sierra's birthday. His messages confirmed everything. "Darren, after the anniversary, it's done. The condo will be ours. Sierra promised me you'll tell her. I'm tired of hiding. Darren." She'll sign. She always does what I say. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling around the phone. My husband, the man I once believed couldn't lie to save his soul, was planning to erase me like a signature. That was the moment the numbness burned away. No more tears, no more denial. I called Aisha. She was my old college friend, now one of D.C.'s best family lawyers. We hadn't talked much in years, but the moment she answered, her voice carried that same warmth. "Naomi girl, it's been ages." "Aisha." My throat tightened. "I need your help." There was a long pause. "Tell me where you are. We'll talk in person." Her office sat on the 22nd floor of a sleek building downtown, glass walls, polished marble, everything that screamed success. But when she hugged me, it wasn't like two professionals meeting. It was like being seen again. "What's going on?" she asked gently. Once we sat down, I told her everything. The late-night whispers, Celeste's visit, the phone, the messages. She listened in silence, occasionally taking notes, her brow tightening as I spoke. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Well, she said finally, your instincts were right. They're plotting something dirty, but you've caught them early enough to stop it. How, I asked, my voice shaking. First, get proof, screenshots of everything. Second, don't confront him. Let him think you're still in the dark. Third, we secure your assets, move money, collect records, make copies, and above all, don't play emotional, play smart. I nodded. Her calm steadiness was contagious. Naomi, she continued, you have something they don't, the truth, and truth is like water. It finds its way through every crack. I couldn't help but smile. You always had a way with metaphors, and you always had terrible taste in men, she teased softly. That made me laugh, the first real laugh in days. When I left her office, I wasn't just Naomi the wife anymore. I was Naomi the woman who'd had enough. I walked through the cold October air feeling strangely light. The city seemed sharper, louder, real again. But the moment I stepped into our condo, the chill returned. The living room smelled faintly of Darren's cologne. On the table, a neatly folded note. Dinner at Mom's? Don't wait up? Good. The snake was with its handler. I opened my laptop and started printing. Emails, messages, screenshots, every piece of evidence I could find. Then I hid them inside the dust jacket of a cookbook Celeste had once given me for the modern wife. She'd written on the inside cover. The irony almost made me laugh. By 10 p.m., I was exhausted. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar, eyes sharper, mouth set firm. I whispered to myself, you wanted a show. Darren, you'll get one. The next morning, he acted like a man auditioning for Husband of the Year. He brought home flowers, roses, my least favorite. For my one and only, he said. Oh, I said with a small smile. That's sweet. Red roses, the universal apology. He froze for a second. Just apology. I shrugged. Just saying what flowers usually mean. He laughed nervously. You and your psychology books? But the way his left eye twitched the same way it did every time he lied told me he knew exactly what I was implying. By noon, Celeste was back at the door. She always had perfect timing, like a crow circling when it smelled trouble. Naomi? She said smoothly. I just came to bring you a little something. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a business card, Mr. Hayes Family Law, Divorce and Property Settlements. For future reference, she said, her lips curving in satisfaction. You never know when you might need professional advice. The gall. I smiled, tight but polite. Thank you, Celeste. I'll be sure to keep it close. Oh, and darling, she added, lowering her voice. Tomorrow, remember to look your best. Appearances are everything, even when they fall apart. When she left, I locked the door behind her and whispered, I'll make sure of that. That night, I couldn't sleep. The condo was too quiet. Every sound exaggerated the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, the whisper of the city outside. I realized something strange. I wasn't scared anymore. It's odd how betrayal burns so hot that it eventually leaves you cold like a forest fire that clears the ground so new things can grow. I took my father's old silver pen from the drawer and held it in my hand. He used to say, a clever man thinks he can outsmart a storm. A clever woman builds a roof before it hits. So that's what I was doing now, building a roof. Tomorrow would be their storm. But I was going to be ready, standing dry while theirs collapsed around them. By dawn, I was ready. Not emotionally, not yet, but strategically. I brewed my coffee, sat by the window, and wrote down every single thing I'd learned. It looked like a battle plan, because that's exactly what it was. Darren was already gone when I woke, claiming he had an early meeting. I almost laughed. If deceit had a time slot, it'd always be at 700 sharp. I glanced at the stack of documents I'd printed, emails, screenshots, bank transactions, his text to Sierra that read, after the toast, she'll sign anything. I'd highlighted that one in yellow. When I slipped those pages into my folder, I felt something stir deep in my chest, not anger this time, but clarity. At 1000 up emo, I called Aisha. We need to move faster, I said. She must have heard the steel in my voice because she didn't hesitate. Tell me what you need. I need to know exactly what happens if my husband tries to use emotional coercion to make me sign property documents. I said, and I need proof that the condo belongs to me, not us. Aisha paused. Who paid for it originally? My parents, I said quietly. A wedding gift. The deed was transferred into my name before we got married. Then it's a premarital asset, she said firmly. He can't touch it. The relief that washed over me was almost physical. Can you confirm that? Only one person can the real estate lawyer who handled the paperwork back then, Mr. Perry. I hadn't thought of him in years. He'd been kind, meticulous, old-fashioned, the sort of man who still wrote things down in neat blue ink. I'll call him, I said, today. Before hanging up, Aisha added softly, Naomi, remember silence is your power right now. Let them think you're unaware. Let them talk themselves into their own trap. It was old age wisdom disguised as legal advice, so I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I won't make a sound. Mr. Perry's office hadn't changed in 20 years, same oak furniture, same frame diplomas, even the same dusty ficus in the corner. Mrs. Sterling, he greeted me warmly. It's been a while. How's Mr. Price? I smiled faintly. He's busy. I'll bet he is. Mr. Perry chuckled, opening a thick leather-bound ledger. Now, what brings you here? I need to confirm something from an old transaction, I said, leaning forward. The condo on M Street, purchased in 2005. You handled the title. He adjusted his glasses and flipped through the pages. Ah, yes. Lovely property. If I recall correctly, your parents provided the funds. They did. Directly from their account. He nodded slowly. That's right. And as per the record here, the deed was originally signed in your name. Price was added 2 months later as your spouse. But the property remains legally classified as a gifted premarital asset. So that means he has no legal claim. Mr. Perry finished. Even if he tries to contest it, the burden of proof is on him. Unless he personally invested in renovations or upgrades, it's entirely yours. I smiled, my heart racing with quiet triumph. Could I have that in writing? He nodded, of course. Come back tomorrow afternoon, I'll prepare the certified statement. As I left his office, a faint laugh escaped my lips. For the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter, the ground steadier. When I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A text from Darren. Don't forget to wear something elegant tomorrow. You'll want to look your best. I stared at the words. A shiver crawled down my spine. The message was polite, almost affectionate, but I could read what he really meant. Dress up for your own downfall. That evening, Celeste appeared again, unannounced, her heels clicking like a countdown. Naomi, dear, she said, setting her handbag on the table. You must be so excited. 25 years, quite the accomplishment. Most women would have driven my son away years ago. I offered her tea, more out of habit than hospitality. Would you like sugar? Just 1 cube, she said, examining her nails. By the way, you've heard of Hayes, haven't you? The family lawyer. Such a brilliant man. He's helped several of our acquaintances with delicate transitions. Transitions, I asked, feigning innocence. Well, she continued smoothly, marriages end. Properties need reallocation, it's natural. Nothing to be ashamed of. Some women resist change, of course, but I've always believed in facing reality head on. I smiled thinly. You've always been very forward-thinking. Celeste. Her eyes glinted. One must be. When she left, she kissed my cheek for the first time in years. And her perfume lingered long after she was gone, sharp and artificial, like everything about her. I poured her untouched tea down the sink and whispered to the empty kitchen, You're playing chess, Celeste. But I was raised by people who built the board. That night, I walked into the bedroom and saw Darren standing in front of the mirror, rehearsing. He didn't notice me at first. His reflection stared back at him as he spoke softly, almost solemnly. Sometimes people grow apart, It's nobody's fault. It's just life. Then he smiled the same false smile he'd worn for weeks. Darren, I said quietly, leaning on the doorframe. He turned, startled. Naomi? Didn't see you there. You've been practicing something. He laughed awkwardly. Just my toast. You know me. I hate public speaking. Of course, I said. You've always hated honesty, too. He froze, studying me, but I didn't blink. Well, he said after a moment, don't stay up too late. Big day tomorrow. When he turned off the light, I lay in the dark, eyes wide open. My pulse was calm, but my thoughts were sharp as glass. By sunrise, I'd already packed a small folder with the condo documents, the inheritance letter, and Aisha's advice written in neat blue ink, let them underestimate you. There's a quirky old fact I once read in medieval Europe. Women couldn't testify in court unless a man confirmed their words. But somehow, it was women who always remembered the truth in detail, who hid letters, memorized dates, and buried secrets until the right moment came. That's how we survive, by keeping the receipts while the men make speeches. Tomorrow, Darren would stand before 100 guests, raise his glass, and try to erase me with words. But he didn't know that I had already rewritten the ending, and the final line would be mine. The day before our silver anniversary began like any other, except every breath I took carried purpose. I'd stopped feeling like a wife and started feeling like an architect, rebuilding a foundation beneath my own feet while pretending to be the dutiful spouse he still thought I was. Darren was pacing in his office on the phone when I passed by. His voice was low, too polite, the way he spoke when he was talking business or lying. Yes, everything's in place, he said. Just make sure the paperwork is ready for her signature after the party. My stomach turned. There it was again, the confirmation I didn't even need. When he hung up, he caught me standing by the doorway. Big day tomorrow, he said, smiling too quickly. You're not having second thoughts about the restaurant, are you? Second thoughts, I said lightly. About dinner with 100 people, never. He grinned, relieved. That was the thing about men like Darren. They never suspected calm. They only feared confrontation, tears, noise. Quiet confidence never registered as danger. After he left, I sat on the sofa, the gray D.C., light spilling across the floor. I opened my folder and went through every document one last time. The deed from Mr. Perry confirming the condo was mine. The email from the German notary about Aunt Josephine's inheritance. Bank confirmation showing my new account. Everything airtight. I didn't just have protection, I had power. And yet, power feels oddly heavy at first, like wearing armor for the first time. You move slower, breathe harder. It's not comfort, it's awareness. At noon, I called Aisha. It's done, I said. She exhaled, half proud, half worried. So tomorrow's the show. Tomorrow, I said, staring out the window, they learn what kind of woman they tried to bury. Naomi? She said softly. Remember, don't go there for revenge. Go there for closure. People like Darren destroy themselves. You just have to make sure you're standing when it happens. She was right, of course. Old wisdom dressed in modern tone. Still, I couldn't help adding. He invited 100 people. Aisha. The least I can do is give them a good story. That evening, as I was ironing my navy dress, the doorbell rang again. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but I already knew who it was. Celeste never could resist a final rehearsal before her grand productions. Naomi, dear, she said as soon as I opened the door. Her voice oozed honey. Her eyes measured me from head to toe. You're glowing. I almost didn't recognize you. Must be the lighting, I said dryly. She laughed, missing or ignoring the edge in my voice. I wanted to check that you're ready for tomorrow. Darren's so proud. 25 years. It's quite the achievement. So many women lose their charm by now. But you, I raised an eyebrow. But me, she hesitated. Well, you've held up. I smiled. Coming from you, that almost sounds like a compliment. Her eyes flickered, but she pressed on. I do hope you'll handle tomorrow with grace. Whatever happens. She couldn't help herself. The mask slipped for just a second. "Celeste," I said, stepping closer. "Thank you for your concern. I promise I'll be unforgettable." Her smile faltered for a breath before she gathered her purse. "Good night, Naomi." "Good night, Celeste." I locked the door and leaned against it, the faint scent of her perfume still in the air, something expensive and hollow, like her affection. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. At 2 a.m, I brewed tea, sat by the kitchen window, and listened to the city hum below. Across the street, a lamplight flickered. I thought about all the women who'd been betrayed like this quietly, systematically, with fake smiles and public toasts. There's an academically debatable saying I once read, "Women are emotional creatures." That's what history's authors wrote men who mistook emotional intelligence for weakness. But what they never realized is this: when women channel emotion into calculation, we become unstoppable. By 3, I was calm. Too calm, maybe. I laid out everything I'd wear the next day: the dress, the pearls Darren's father once gave me, and a small folder that fit perfectly inside my clutch. The folder wasn't for decoration. It was a weapon. When morning came, the air had that crisp stillness that only shows up before storms. I took a long shower, blow-dried my hair, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in years, I saw my mother's face looking back. Calm, Inez, fearless. I could almost hear her voice whispering, "When men underestimate you, use it. It's the only advantage you'll ever need." Downstairs, Darren was sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone. He looked immaculate, tailored suit, silver cufflinks, a dash of arrogance behind every blink. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," I replied simply. He smiled. "Tonight's going to be special." "Oh, I have no doubt." He didn't notice the double meaning. I drove to Mr. Perry's office one last time before the event. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Certified confirmation," he said. "If there's any dispute, this will settle it immediately." I thanked him, shaking his hand firmly. "You've always been sharp." "Mrs. Sterling," he said, eyes twinkling. "Your husband's about to learn something most men never do." "What's that?" He smiled. "That women remember everything." I laughed softly. "You're not wrong." When I got home, the clock read 4 p.m. The event was scheduled for 7. 3 hours to prepare for the end of one life and the beginning of another. I dressed slowly, savoring every motion. The dark blue fabric hugged my shoulders, elegant but strong. My hair, pinned neatly, shimmered under the lamp. I didn't want to look fragile. I wanted to look final. As I zipped my clutch closed around the folder, I whispered, "For 25 years, I believed you, Darren, but tonight, you'll believe me." It's strange, isn't it? How betrayal sharpens the senses. The smell of his cologne, the sound of ice clinking in his glass, even the echo of his laughter, it all becomes evidence. And yet, there's beauty in that awareness. Betrayal may break trust, but it builds clarity. As I stood by the window one last time before we left, I watched the sunset bleed into the Potomac. The city lights flickered alive, like applause before the curtain rises. Tomorrow would belong to them, or so they thought. But tonight was mine. The day of the anniversary dawned soft and golden, the kind of morning that fools you into believing nothing bad could ever happen under such gentle light. Birds chirped outside my window, the air smelled faintly of rain, and for a fleeting second, I almost forgot what was waiting for me that evening. Then I saw the folder on the dresser, my silent reminder. Darren was whistling in the kitchen, of all things. Whistling. He'd already laid out his suit, the gray one he wore to business awards. "Morning, my love," he greeted as I walked in. "Big day." "Yes," I said, pouring myself coffee. "The biggest." He leaned in and kissed my cheek. A performance kiss. "I just want tonight to be perfect," he said. "You deserve that much." I wanted to laugh. If hypocrisy had a smell, it would have been that cologne he was wearing, the one Sierra probably helped him pick. But I just smiled and said, "You're sweet, Darren." He seemed relieved. Finally, some peace between us. Peace. The word sounded like an insult. When he left to run a few errands, I sat by the kitchen table and took a long, sip of my coffee. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The fear had burned itself out and turned into focus. I spent the next few hours on the phone with the German notary, finalizing the transfer from Aunt Josephine's estate. They confirmed the funds would be released within the week and that I now legally own the condo in Miami. $3 million in total assets, enough to start over anywhere, enough to never need the prices again. I opened my laptop and checked the bank's secure portal. My personal account glowed on the screen with quiet power. I moved a few thousand into an emergency fund, just to be safe. Then I shut the lid. No one needed to know, not yet. By late afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror in my navy dress. Simple, elegant. The kind of dress that says, I don't need attention to be seen. My hair was pinned loosely, my pearl earrings caught the light, and my lipstick was a shade too bold for Celeste's taste. Perfect. As I adjusted the clasp of my necklace, my reflection whispered a truth I hadn't wanted to hear until now. I wasn't dressing for Darren. I was dressing for closure. When Darren appeared at the doorway, he looked nervous, like a man walking toward a victory he didn't deserve. You look stunning, he said. Thank you, I replied softly. You too. You really went all out. He chuckled. Only the best for my wife. Tonight will be unforgettable. Oh, I said, slipping my purse over my shoulder. I know it will. He didn't notice the folder tucked neatly inside my clutch. The Watergate Hotel's ballroom gleamed like a movie set. Chandeliers glittered, tables gleamed with white linen, and golden candlelight danced across the walls. It was extravagant, the kind of celebration that screams, "Look how perfect we are." Guests mingled with champagne glasses in hand, familiar faces, Darren's colleagues, my co-workers, even his boss, Mr. Budrow, all smiles and polite small talk. Celeste floated among them like a queen bee, accepting compliments as if she were the guest of honor. 25 years, she said to one woman, and they still make people believe in marriage. I could almost admire the audacity. As I entered the ballroom, a hush fell. Compliments, smiles, fake admiration, I collected them all like confetti. But near the back, I saw her, Sierra, the mistress, blonde, poised, and young, of course. She wore a cream-colored dress, far too formal for an assistant, but perfectly suited for a woman expecting to take another's place. She turned, met my eyes for half a second, then smiled polite, confident, cruel. Celeste appeared beside me. Naomi, dear, she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. You've outdone yourself. You look radiant. Darren's speech will make you cry. Then I'll bring tissues, I replied. She chuckled, not realizing the joke was on her. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter and empty compliments. I hardly tasted the food. Darren was charming, attentive, even romantic. To the crowd, he looked like the perfect husband. When the waiters cleared the dessert plates, he tapped his glass. The room fell quiet. Dear friends, he began, smiling warmly. Tonight we celebrate 25 years of partnership, of love, of endurance. Endurance. My jaw tightened. Naomi and I have shared countless memories, he continued, but also many challenges. And as life evolves, we evolve too. We must have the courage to face new chapters with honesty. He paused dramatically, like an actor savoring his line. Celeste dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Sierra, near the back, leaned forward slightly, smiling. I want to thank Naomi, Darren said, turning to me, for her years of patience, for standing by me. But the truth is, we've grown apart, and tonight, I want to be honest with her. And with all of you. The room went silent. Forks froze mid-air. He turned back to the guests. After tonight, Naomi and I will be going our separate ways. I've filed for divorce. A collective gasp. Some murmured, others stared. Celeste's lips twitched into a faint smile. Darren continued, voice steady. This isn't tragedy, it's renewal. We both deserve happiness even if it means apart. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. A few uncertain clinks of glasses followed. I sat still, calm, every eye turned to me, waiting for tears, for outrage. But I simply smiled. "Thank you, Darren," I said softly. He blinked, caught off guard. "Naomi." "Thank you," I repeated, rising to my feet. "For your honesty. It saves me the trouble." He looked uneasy. "Naomi, maybe this isn't the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time," I said. Taking the microphone gently from his hand, the ballroom fell into absolute silence. I turned to the crowd, my voice calm and measured. "Friends, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Darren's right, it's time for honesty." I glanced at him, then at Celeste, whose color had drained. I knew about this little surprise. The phone calls, the lawyer, even the lovely assistant in the cream dress. A few guests gasped. Sierra froze, glass halfway to her lips. "Darren planned to make me sign away my rights to the condo tonight," I continued. "Unfortunately for him, it's not his to give." I reached into my clutch and unfolded Mr. Perry's certified document. The condo on M Street was gifted to me by my parents before our marriage. Legally, it's my property alone. The paper trembled slightly in my hand, not from fear, but from the weight of 25 years of silence breaking all at once. And as for what's next, I smiled faintly. 3 weeks ago, I inherited 2 properties and over $1 million from my aunt in Germany. So if anyone here is worried about my future, don't. A murmur rippled through the guests. Someone whispered, "She's rich." Another said, "Oh my God." Darren stood frozen, his face pale, lips parted. I turned back to him. "You wanted a new beginning. Darren, congratulations. You're free. But so am I." The room erupted. Celeste's napkin fluttered to the floor. Sierra's champagne glass shattered. Darren tried to speak, but no words came. "Enjoy the rest of the evening," I said, setting the microphone down gently. "Dinner's paid for with our joint account, of course." And then I walked away, heels clicking softly against the marble floor, leaving behind 25 years and one ruined empire. Some say revenge is sweet. I disagree. It's quiet. It's the stillness that follows a storm, when the air smells clean again and the sky feels wide open. As I stepped into the cool night air outside the water gate, I realized I wasn't trembling. I was free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Mrs. Price. I was Naomi Sterling again. The night air outside the water gate was soft, almost merciful. It brushed against my face like a hand saying, "It's over now." I could hear muffled chaos spilling from inside, voices rising, glasses clinking. Someone yelling Darren's name, but I didn't turn back. I stepped out onto Virginia Avenue, my heels clicking in rhythm with my heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. Each step sounded like a closing door. I reached the curb just as a taxi pulled up. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, leaned out the window. "Need a ride, ma'am?" I smiled faintly. "Yes, please. Just anywhere quiet." As the car pulled away, I watched the ballroom lights fade behind me, a chapter ending in the rearview mirrors. But I wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Not yet. Because men like Darren and mothers like Celeste don't crumble quietly. They unravel in public. And inside that ballroom, the unraveling had already begun. Inside, Darren was still standing on the stage, the microphone in his hand like a dead thing. The crowd buzzed, not with applause, but outrage. "Is this a joke his boss, Mr. Budrow, demanded? You humiliate your wife in front of 100 people." Darren tried to laugh. "You don't understand. It was mutual." "Mutual Marina," one of my coworkers, cut in sharply. "We all heard you. Darren, you called her boring. You called your marriage a mistake." Someone else shouted, "That woman carried you for 25 years. Even Celeste couldn't save him." She was pacing near the stage, face flushed, whispering furiously, "Darren, do something. Fix it." But there was nothing to fix. And then Sierra spoke. "You didn't tell me she had money." She said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "You said she was broke, that the condo would be ours." A few heads snapped her way. Celeste gasped. Our. Sierra crossed her arms. Oh, don't look at me like that. He told me everything. How you were helping him set it up. The lawyer, the papers, it was your idea. Celeste's composure cracked. You little what? Sierra snapped. You both used me. Promised me a condo, a future, all for this. The argument exploded, sharp and raw, in front of everyone. Guests began recording on their phones. Darren noticed too late. Stop filming, he barked. This is private. Private, one of my coworkers said. You just aired your marriage in public. Genius. Laughter. Not cruel, but the kind that stings more because it's true. Darren slammed the microphone down, but it let out a shriek of feedback, echoing through the ballroom like a scream. Naomi twisted everything he shouted. She's manipulative. But no one believed him anymore. Celeste hissed. You fool. You should have controlled the narrative. Sierra, trembling but defiant, added, Oh, I'll control something. All right, you owe me money. Darren, the jewelry, the apartment deposit, all of it came from your wife's bank account. Gasps filled the room. Even I hadn't known that part. By the time I reached home, I already had messages flooding my phone. Candace, my friend girl, it's all over social media. Someone posted a clip. You're trending. I didn't respond. I sat on the couch, took off my shoes, and let the silence sink in. For 25 years, that condo had been a cage dressed up as comfort. Tonight, it felt like mine for the first time. The clock ticked softly. 11:45 p.m. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and leaned against the counter. Freedom, I whispered, tastes like Sauvignon Blanc and peace. It made me laugh, a real laugh this time. There's something strangely funny about betrayal. Once you're past the heartbreak, it's like watching a bad play and realizing you already know every line. Meanwhile, in that glittering ballroom, the show went on without me. Darren's boss cornered him near the buffet table. I can't keep you on after this. Our client saw you tonight. You've embarrassed yourself and this company. Please, Michael, Darren pleaded. You've known me for years. I thought I did, the man interrupted. Turns out I only knew your mask. Celeste tried to salvage what little dignity she had left, but it was impossible. The guests had turned on them completely. Aunt Clarice, one of my relatives, walked straight up to Darren and said, I raised Naomi after her mother passed. You humiliated my niece. And for what? Some half-dressed girl in a condo. The room erupted with murmurs again. Sierra threw up her hands. Half-dressed. Excuse me, I was promised stability. Promised by a liar. Someone muttered. Darren's voice cracked. Everybody calm down. But calm was gone. Celeste was crying now, half out of fury, half out of humiliation. Sierra stormed toward the door, but not before turning back. You're both pathetic. I hope you choke on your new beginning. And then she was gone, heels clacking across marble like gunshots. Back home. I opened the balcony door. The city glowed below. Every window a small, distant story. I thought of all the women like me, the ones who built their lives around men who mistook loyalty for weakness. We all learn the same lesson eventually. Silence is not submission. It's strategy. There's a quirky old fact I love. Aristotle once said, women are unfinished men. Well, Aristotle never met a woman who planned her own rescue. I sipped my wine and smiled. Unfinished. Maybe it's the men who never finish growing up. My phone buzzed again, a new message from Aisha. I saw the video. You were magnificent. Call me tomorrow. We'll start the filings. I texted back one word, done. And it was. The next morning, the headlines were merciless. Silver anniversary scandal. CEO publicly dumps wife, gets dumped harder. Darren Price's divorce speech backfires spectacularly. The calm woman who outplayed them all. I sat at the kitchen counter, reading them while buttering toast, smiling faintly. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance being restored. Darren wanted to turn my humiliation into his freedom. Instead, my silence had turned into a mirror, one that showed him exactly who he was. and it wasn't pretty. By mid-morning the next day, the world had caught up with the disaster that was the Price anniversary. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing texts, missed calls, even a few emails from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Candace left a voicemail that started with laughter and ended with awe. Naomi, girl, I saw the clip. The way you took that microphone, you looked like the CEO of Poetic Justice. I couldn't help but smile. For 25 years, I'd let people talk at me. Last night, I finally talked for me. But there was still one thing left unfinished legal closure. Aisha texted early, meet me at the office. 2 p.m. Bring everything. I gathered the papers, the certified deed, the inheritance letter, copies of every message. Then I put on my sunglasses and walked out of the condo that for the first time in decades felt like it belonged to me alone. Downtown D.C. was buzzing like a hive. On a nearby cafe TV, a morning show was replaying snippets of the party footage. The host chuckled. Viewers are calling it the divorce heard around Georgetown. Mrs. Sterling handled it like a queen. Mr. Price, not so much. The audience laughed. I ordered my coffee quietly, pretending not to notice the barista's double take when she looked at me. Fame, even accidental fame, felt strange. Aisha's office was a haven of order. She met me at the elevator with a hug. You okay? I'm breathing, I said. That's a start. She led me to her desk. Files were already open, papers clipped, highlighters neatly aligned. Aisha didn't do chaos, she planned wars with grace. We'll file for divorce today, she said. Given his behavior, we'll request full ownership confirmation of the condo and protection of your inheritance. Will he contest it? Let him try. The documents speak louder than any speech he ever gave. I exhaled slowly. Thank you, Aisha. She grinned. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. I want him signing those papers before the internet finishes memeing his meltdown. That made me laugh, a real, warm laugh that filled the quiet office. For the first time in days, I wasn't surviving. I was living. That evening, I decided to take a walk. The city was glowing in twilight, the Potomac reflecting streaks of pink and orange. I passed couples holding hands, young people on scooters, an old man feeding pigeons. Ordinary life felt beautiful again. Then, as fate would have it, I saw Darren. He was standing by his car outside his office building, phone to his ear, face drawn tight. His suit was wrinkled, tie crooked, hair unkempt. I could have walked away, but something in me wanted to see. He turned just as I stopped near the curb. For a moment, neither of us moved. Naomi, he said finally. His voice was hoarse. You ruined me. No, Darren, I said softly. You did that yourself. He looked around, as if still searching for an audience to convince. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I lost my job. I know, I said calmly. I also know you emptied our joint savings, so I'd say we're even. His jaw clenched. You think you've won? I didn't play to win, I said. I played to end the game. He stepped closer, desperation clouding his eyes. Naomi, we can fix this. I was confused, Sierra, my mother. It all got out of control. We could start over. I almost laughed. You threw away a 25-year marriage for a fantasy, and you still think you're in control. Darren, the only thing left to fix is your conscience. He blinked, eyes darting like a man realizing the stage lights are gone. Goodbye, Darren, I said, turning away. He reached out, but stopped himself. Naomi, what are you going to do now? I smiled over my shoulder. Exactly what you never let me do, live. That night, I treated myself to dinner alone at a small Italian restaurant I loved but hadn't visited in years. The waiter asked, unable for two. No, I said with a grin, just one. There was freedom in that sentence. As I ate, I overheard two women at the next table whispering, She's the one from the video, one said. The one with the calm face while her husband imploded, the other asked, Yes, I want to be that calm one day. I almost turned to tell them that calm doesn't come from strength. It comes from exhaustion. From the moment you stop fighting to be believed and start living for yourself, but I just smiled instead. Let them believe in calm is power. Sometimes it is. Back at home, I found an envelope under the door. Darren's handwriting. Naomi, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand now. You were my home, and I treated you like furniture. I'll sign whatever you want. Please tell your lawyer I won't contest anything. Darren. I read it twice, folded it neatly, and placed it in the drawer with the rest of the documents. Closure doesn't need a reply. As the week went on, things moved fast. The divorce filings were clean, the judge efficient, the verdict clear, the condo and all related assets legally belonged to me. Celeste tried to contact me once, leaving a voicemail that began with, "You've misunderstood everything," and ended with, "I only wanted what was best for Darren." I deleted it. Sierra, she'd already moved on. Of course, someone sent me a social media post of her with a new man, captioned, "New beginnings with real love." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. A quirky little fact I remembered floated through my mind in ancient Rome. Wives were legally considered part of their husband's property. Maybe that's why it feels so good, centuries later, to finally hold the deed in your own name. One night, Aisha called, "Naomi, have you thought about what's next?" "I have," I said, "and it's something quiet, something mine." I told her about my dream of opening a small publishing house, something that honored my love for books and my father's legacy as a teacher. She loved the idea. Books last longer than people, she said. Perfect revenge for a man who wanted you forgotten. I smiled. I'm not out for revenge, Aisha. I just want peace. By the time I hung up, the city was dark, but my condo felt bright, warm lamps, the faint hum of music, and the knowledge that every square inch of it was mine. I stood by the window and whispered, "You did it, Naomi." The reflection in the glass smiled back older, wiser, finally whole. And for the first time in 25 years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come home. Because I already was. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. The judge, a small woman with glasses and a voice like steady rain, read the verdict in the same calm tone she might have used to order lunch. Mrs. Naomi Sterling retains full ownership of the Georgetown condominium, as it is a premarital gift. The petitioner, Mr. Darren Price, is responsible for all outstanding personal debts and liabilities incurred during the marriage. The gavel came down with a soft crack. That sound barely louder than a knuckle tap closed a 25-year chapter of my life. Darren didn't look at me. His hair was gray at the edges now, his once flawless posture sagging like an overwatered plant. Celeste sat behind him, stone-faced, clutching her handbag like a lifeline. The same woman who once told me, "You're lucky to have my son," now couldn't meet my eyes. I stood, adjusted my coat, and whispered to Aisha, "Let's go." As we walked out, the courtroom air felt lighter, the kind of light that only follows justice. Outside, the wind bit through my scarf. Reporters had gathered, of course they had. One shouted, "Miss Sterling, Miss, how does it feel to win?" I smiled faintly. "It doesn't feel like winning," I said. "It feels like breathing." Aisha nudged me into the car before they could ask more. "You handled that beautifully," she said. "That'll go viral too." I groaned. "Wonderful. I'll be famous for surviving my own husband." Aisha chuckled. "Better that than being famous for tolerating him." Fair point. Back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked through the condo, touching everything like I was meeting it for the first time, the piano by the window, the framed photos I'd nearly thrown away, the stack of books Darren once called my clutter. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt earned. I opened the balcony doors. The autumn air was cool, fragrant with rain. Down below, the city lights glowed like embers. I remembered my father once told me, when people show you their worst, don't let it make you smaller. Grow anyway. And that's exactly what I was doing. The next day, I visited the notary's office to finalize Aunt Josephine's inheritance. The clerk, a polite young woman with a German accent, handed me the last document. "Congratulations, Mrs. Sterling," she said. "You are now the official owner of the Munich and Miami Beach properties. Everything is complete." Complete. That word hit me deeper than I expected. "Thank you," I said quietly. As I walked out, I realized something simple but profound. The opposite of heartbreak isn't happiness, it's wholeness. And I was finally whole. Meanwhile, Darren's fall was playing out in slow motion across social media. Every headline was a bruise. Corporate exec fired after public divorce scandal. The silver anniversary massacre. Inside the most awkward party in Da-Si. Ex-wife's calm clapback becomes viral empowerment moment. Even my coworkers at Alliance Development Group whispered about it for weeks, but not with pity, with pride. My boss, Mr. Budrow, stopped by my office one afternoon, holding a mug of coffee. "Naomi," he said, "you've been through hell, but your work hasn't slipped once. If you ever need anything a reference, a raise, a sabbatical, just say the word. That means a lot," I said sincerely, "but I think I'm done with numbers for a while." He tilted his head. "You mean, I'm resigning?" I said, "I'm opening a publishing house." He blinked. "A publishing house?" I nodded. "Small press, European literature and translation. My aunt's estate gives me the means. And, well, I've had enough of balance sheets. I want to create something lasting." He smiled warmly. "Then I think you've already won, Naomi." 2 months later, I stood in front of a modest glass door that read Silverline Press. The logo shimmered in soft gold, a single open book whose pages curved like wings. Inside, boxes of novels and translated manuscripts filled the space. My first team, 3 young editors and 1 designer, chatted excitedly around a long oak table. "This place feels peaceful," said Anna, my editor-in-chief, a woman half my age but twice as fiery. "Peaceful is the point," I said, smiling. "Books don't shout, they whisper, just like truth." That afternoon, when everyone left, I sat alone in the quiet office. I ran my hand over the first book we'd publish, Letters from Vienna, a forgotten memoir translated from German, the kind of story that would have meant something to my Aunt Josephine. Outside, the Miami sun bathed everything in gold. Yes, I'd moved south, a new home, a new chapter. A few weeks later, as I unpacked the last of my boxes, the doorbell rang. The concierge handed me an envelope. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. "Naomi, I don't expect a reply. I only wanted to tell you that I see it now. I built my life around pride, and you built yours around grace. I thought I could win by hurting you, but all I did was lose the only person who ever believed in me. I hope someday you can forgive me, not for my sake, but for yours, because I've learned that regret is heavier than any punishment. Darren." I read it once, then again, then folded it and slipped it into my drawer, beside the deed to the condo. Not out of nostalgia, but as evidence that even the cruel can recognize the truth. Eventually, there's a funny little fact I'd read somewhere. The Greek word for truth is aletheia, which literally means to unhide. That's what I had done. I unhid myself. Not the wife, not the caretaker, not the extension of someone else's name, just Naomi. One evening, as twilight painted the ocean pink, I sat on my balcony overlooking Miami Beach. The waves shimmered like liquid silver fitting for a woman whose so-called silver anniversary had turned into pure gold. I whispered, "You did it." And for the first time, there was no bitterness in my voice, just gratitude for the pain, the lessons, and the peace that followed. Down below, a couple strolled hand in hand. I wished them well, silently. Love isn't the enemy. Ignorance is. Then I lifted my glass of wine to the wind and said softly, "To truth, and to every woman who finds her voice, even if it takes 25 years. The waves applauded. Miami mornings have their own kind of poetry. The air tastes faintly of salt, and the sky glows peach before the sun even shows itself. I woke up to that kind of light, the kind that makes you forget you ever lived under gray skies. Silverline Press was officially 2 months old. Every morning, I'd walk barefoot through the office before my team arrived, checking the books lined neatly along the walls. It wasn't a grand publishing house, not yet, but it was honest work, clean work, no lies hiding under silk tablecloths, no deals whispered at midnight. I like to think of it as my second life. One morning, as I arranged a shipment of new prints, Anna, my editor, came in carrying her phone. "Naomi," she said, eyes wide, "you're on television again." I laughed. For what this time? My criminal ability to stay calm. "No," she said, setting the phone down on the counter. "They're talking about you as an example of dignified resilience. You're part of a women's leadership segment on CNN." I froze mid-step. On the screen, an anchor was saying my name with that newsreader calm. Naomi Sterling, whose grace under public betrayal went viral earlier this year, has since opened her own publishing company in Miami. Her story has inspired thousands of women to find strength through self-worth. Photos appeared me at the book launch, smiling beside my team, me walking down the courthouse steps in a navy dress. Anna grinned. "You're kind of a movement now." I chuckled softly. "If you told me last year I'd be trending for surviving heartbreak, I'd have laughed." "Maybe that's the point," she said. "You didn't just survive, you built something." There was something in her eyes, admiration, maybe. It made me stand a little taller. That evening, after everyone left, I poured myself a small glass of wine and sat by the open window. Miami's breeze has a way of talking to you if you're quiet enough. It smells like the sea, the future, and freedom. I pulled out a notebook and started writing a letter, not to Darren, not to Celeste, but to myself. "Dear Naomi, you did not fail because your marriage ended. You succeeded because you refused to end with it. You learned that love can be true and still temporary. That betrayal doesn't destroy you unless you surrender to it. You learned to build your own peace." I paused, took a sip, and smiled. "Old age wisdom, straight from my own head," I murmured. It felt good to talk to myself without apologizing for it. 2 weeks later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a book, The Art of Letting Go. A note slipped from the first page. "I found this in a thrift shop and thought of you. Thank you for teaching me what grace looks like. Sierra." I stared at the note for a long time, unsure what to feel. There was no venom in her handwriting, no pretense, just something almost human. I put the note back inside the book and placed it on my shelf. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reopening doors. Sometimes it's just refusing to let bitterness move in rent-free. The months that followed were peaceful. Silverline Press began growing faster than I'd imagined. We signed 2 authors, printed 3 novels, and partnered with a small European distributors. At night, I'd often find myself at the balcony again, watching the ocean breathe in slow rhythm. My father used to say the ocean was the only thing that forgives without forgetting. Maybe that's what healing looks like, constant motion that never denies what came before. One evening, Aisha called me from D.C. "Guess who I ran into?" she said. Her voice carrying that lawyer's edge softened by friendship. I sighed. "Please don't say Darren." She laughed. "Too late. He's driving an Uber now. Picked up one of my paralegals last week. Apparently, he talks about you like you're a ghost that changed his life." I didn't laugh immediately. I just looked out at the horizon and said, "Maybe I did." "Regrets?" she asked. No, I said softly. "Just lessons." I walked down to the beach that night, shoes in hand, sand cool under my feet. The waves shimmered under the moonlight. Somewhere in that sound, I could still hear the woman I used to be, the one who stayed quiet when she should have spoken, who thought endurance was the same thing as love. But now, she was just part of the tide. Still there, still remembered, but no longer drowning. I sat on the sand and whispered, "You did what you had to do." And the waves whispered back, "Yes, You did. There's a quirky fact I once read: the average human heart beats about 3 billion times in a lifetime. If you think about it, that's 3 billion chances to change course, to forgive, to love again just differently. I'd wasted too many of those heartbeats on fear. Not anymore. A few days later, Silver Line Press got its first award nomination, Emerging Independent Publisher of the Year. The news came by email, but I didn't celebrate loudly. I just sat there, smiling, fingers tracing the words on the screen. This quiet victory was my true anniversary. No toasts and no speeches, no betrayals, just me, my work, and peace. Later that night, I made tea instead of wine and wrote one last note in my journal. I used to think being loved was my greatest accomplishment. Now I know it's being free. Then, in a tiny flourish beneath it, I wrote, "And freedom, my dear, looks good on you." The kettle clicked off in the silence. I closed the notebook and turned off the lights. For the first time in years, I didn't need to tell a story to feel heard. The silence was enough. It's funny how healing sneaks up on you. One morning you wake, and the heaviness that used to sit on your chest like a sleeping cat is simply gone. No announcement, no trumpet of victory, just quiet light seeping through the blinds and a heart that finally feels like home again. That morning came for me 6 months after the divorce. I was sitting on my balcony in Miami, barefoot, reading submissions for Silver Line's next book. A soft sea breeze carried the scent of salt and jasmine. I looked out at the ocean and thought, so this is peace. Not the kind that depends on people or promises, but the kind you build yourself brick by honest brick. My phone buzzed. It was Aisha, of course. "Naomi, you won't believe this," she said. "You've been invited to speak at the Women's Resilience Forum in D.C. I almost laughed. "Me a speaker?" "Yes, you. The committee wants you to open the conference, the calm that broke the internet," she teased. I shook my head, smiling. "Don't make me sound like a brand." "You are a brand. Naomi. Dignity with receipts." I snorted into my coffee. "Fine, I'll think about it." I thought about it for 3 days. Part of me didn't want to go back to D.A., that city filled with old ghosts and echoing laughter that wasn't laughter at all. But another part, the stronger, the steadier part, wanted closure. So I said yes. The conference was held at the Kennedy Center, all glass and light, overlooking the same Potomac that had once reflected my tears. Now it shimmered like a mirror for my rebirth. The organizers greeted me warmly, guiding me backstage. "You'll be our final keynote," one said, "and the night strong." When I stepped on stage, 1,000 faces looked back at me, women of every age, some with gray hair like mine, others barely old enough to vote. The applause was gentle, not wild, the kind that says, "We see you." I stood at the podium and took a slow breath. I was married for 25 years. I began to a man who taught me everything I never wanted to become. A ripple of laughter moved through the room, not cruel laughter, but understanding. I thought love meant loyalty. I continued softly. I thought silence meant strength. But the truth is, silence is only golden when it's chosen. When it's forced, it's a cage. You could have heard a pin drop. I learned that the most dangerous lies are not the ones people tell us, I said, but the ones we repeat to ourselves to keep the peace. I paused, my voice steady now. And when peace costs your self-respect, it's time to start a new kind of war, the quiet kind, the kind where you reclaim your name, your story, your life. The applause swelled. Some women stood, a few wiped tears. I smiled, not from pride, but from connection, a sisterhood of survivors, unbroken and unashamed. Afterward, as I walked through the lobby, an older woman stopped me. Her hair was silver white, her hands trembling slightly as she held mine. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, "I left my husband last month after 40 years. I saw your video. It gave me courage." My eyes burned, but I held her hand tight. "Then it wasn't for nothing," I whispered. That night, I stayed in a small D.C. hotel overlooking the river. It It was raining softly, the same kind of rain that had fallen the night Darren first betrayed me. Only now, it didn't sting. It sounded like applause from heaven. I ordered tea, sat by the window, and thought of my old condo in Georgetown. I'd sold it. Finally, the young couple who bought it sent me a thank you note saying, "We feel the warmth in the walls." Maybe they did. Maybe healing leaves traces. A week later, back in Miami, life flowed on like the tide. Silverline Press released its third bestseller, The Woman Who Waited for Herself. The irony wasn't lost on me. Anna came into my office one afternoon with a small white box. "You got mail," she said. Inside was a bracelet, delicate, silver, engraved with the words, "Resilience is quiet." No sender, no note. I smiled. I didn't need to know who it came from. That evening, I took a walk on the beach. The sky was streaked with gold, the water warm against my feet. Children were laughing nearby. Couples strolled with fingers interlaced, and somewhere behind me, a jazz musician played a saxophone so soft it sounded like memory. I closed my eyes and breathed in deep. For years, I thought my story ended in that ballroom, the betrayal, the microphone, the revenge. But that was just the climax. The real story was everything after the quiet rebuild, the rediscovery, the peace. I once read that pearls are born from irritation, a wound that the oyster refuses to let fester. Instead, it transforms it into beauty. Maybe that's all healing really is, turning pain into something that gleams. As I walked back home, I whispered to the sea, "You were right, Dad. Growing anyway is the victory." And when I turned back, the tide washed over my footprints, erasing the path behind me, but not the woman who walked it. A year passed, just like that. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring out at the ocean from my balcony, wondering how something could feel eternal and fleeting all at once. Time is like the tide, it takes what it wants, but it always brings something new in return. Miami became home. Not the kind of home filled with family portraits and dinner invitations, but the quiet kind built from peace, solitude, and the faint hum of a ceiling fan at night. Silverline Press was thriving. We'd published 6 books, won 2 awards, and found a loyal audience of readers who, like me, believed stories could heal the parts of us that logic couldn't touch. One evening, after our small celebration dinner, Anna stayed behind as the others left. "Naomi," she said softly, "do you ever think about him?" I leaned back, smiling faintly. Which him? The one who betrayed me, or the one I used to believe in? She hesitated. "Both." I took a long breath. "Sometimes, but not with anger, just curiosity, like reading an old chapter in a book I've already finished." Anna nodded. "That's kind of beautiful." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it's just what happens when you stop trying to edit the past." A few days later, I received an unexpected letter forwarded from my old address in Côte. The return name made me pause. Celeste Price. My heart didn't race this time. It just wondered. I opened it carefully. "Dear Naomi, I don't expect you to forgive me. I only wanted you to know that I've lost nearly everything. The mansion, the savings, even the respect of those who once called me a friend. But in losing those things, I also lost the arrogance that blinded me. You were a good wife to my son, better than he ever deserved. I can see that now. If I could turn back time, I'd have treated you like the daughter you should have been to me. Take care of yourself. Naomi, you won, and you did it with dignity. Celeste." I folded the letter gently and set it aside. There was a strange warmth behind my ribs, not triumph closure. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always come with a hug. Sometimes, it's just the quiet decision not to pass on the pain. That weekend, Aisha came to visit. She wore her usual sharp suit, but carried flip-flops in her bag for the beach. She said, "We spent hours talking on the balcony, watching the light fade into violet over the ocean." "Do you ever think of remarrying?" she asked suddenly. I laughed so hard my tea nearly spilled. "Aisha, I just got done building an empire of calm. Why would I invite chaos again?" She chuckled. Fair enough. But you never know. Life's full of surprises. I smiled, gazing out at the sea. Maybe, but this time, I won't mistake noise for excitement. Bounce has become my favorite song. That night, after Aisha left, I went for a walk along the boardwalk. Couples passed by, holding hands. Families laughed around ice cream stands. A little boy ran up to me and said, "You dropped this." He handed me a seashell, perfect spiral, white with a pink shimmer. "Thank you," I said. He smiled. "It sounds like the ocean if you listen close." I pressed it to my ear, and sure enough, the ocean whispered back, soft and steady. When I got home, I placed it on my desk beside my favorite book, a reminder that even the smallest gifts can carry entire worlds inside. 1 month later, Silver Line Press received its biggest order yet, 5,000 copies of The Woman Who Waited for Herself for a national bookstore chain, the same story I had written under a pen name My Story. I hadn't told anyone. The book's final line read, "She thought the storm had ruined her life, but it only washed away what wasn't meant to stay." When I saw those words in print, I felt something click into place inside me. That was it, the last piece of healing. Later that night, I recorded a small video for my channel, my first since everything had happened. I didn't plan it. I just pressed record and spoke softly, the way I used to. "Hey everyone," I began. "It's been a while. Tonight, I just want to talk to anyone out there who thinks it's too late to start over. It's not. I promise you it's never too late to walk out of the fire and find the stars again." I paused, smiling. "You might not survive the betrayal, but you'll survive yourself, and that's what really matters. The trick is simple. Don't chase revenge. Build peace instead. Peace that no one can touch. Peace that wears your name like a crown." I let the silence breathe before ending with my usual line. "Now, turn off the lights. Let a fan hum softly in the dark, and remember some endings are just well-disguised beginnings." The video went viral within a day, but for once, I didn't check the numbers. I didn't care about views, comments, or shares. I just sat in my living room, light from the city flickering against the window, feeling that strange warmth again, not the rush of vindication, but the stillness of peace. Outside, the moon glowed full, brushing the waves with silver. The same silver that once marked a broken anniversary now shimmered on my rebirth. And I whispered into the night, "Thank you, life, for breaking me just enough to let the light in." Naomi Sterling's story is not one of revenge, it's one of rebirth. Betrayed on her 25th wedding anniversary by her husband Darren and his calculating mother, she was publicly humiliated in front of 100 guests, but instead of collapsing, Naomi turned her pain into power, quietly. She gathered evidence, uncovered her husband's schemes, and revealed the truth at the very event meant to destroy her. That night, she walked away with her dignity intact and the upper hand. The condo, once the battlefield of her marriage, became her victory ground. A secret inheritance transformed her into a woman of means and freedom, but her greatest wealth wasn't the millions she inherited, it was the serenity she earned. Naomi built Silver Line Press, a small publishing house that thrived under her gentle guidance. She became a symbol of resilience, of calm strength in the face of betrayal. Years later, she forgave, not to reconcile, but to free herself. She learned that healing isn't loud, it's patient, deliberate, and deeply personal. In the end, Naomi didn't seek vengeance. She sought peace and found it. Her voice, once silenced by manipulation, became a whisper that traveled through thousands of screens, comforting strangers, reminding them that self-worth doesn't vanish with heartbreak. Her final truth was simple yet timeless. Love may fail you, people may betray you, but dignity, that's yours to keep forever. And as the ocean sang outside her window, Naomi's story became what all great stories become, not an ending, but a promise of new beginnings.